Think about those moments when your hand just starts to wander across the page, maybe during a really long video call.
Uh-huh.
Or you're listening to a presentation, maybe on a phone call that just goes on forever.
Yeah, I know exactly what you mean.
And you're not really thinking about it, but suddenly there are these shapes, these lines appearing. Have you ever stopped and wondered, like, are those doodles actually doing something useful for my brain?
That's a really great question, actually.
Yeah.
And it's pretty much what we're diving into today. Let's kind of forget that old idea that doodling just means you're bored or, not paying attention.
Right.
We've looked at some really compelling research, and our mission here is to unpack the surprising cognitive stuff, the psychological bits, and even the artistic side of this everyday thing, especially for you, someone who likes getting solid knowledge like quickly and thoroughly.
Absolutely. And we've got a great stack of sources. We'll be looking at various studies, different viewpoints. There's Gupta's work from 2016, gives us a good foundation, gets into the brain aspects. Then there's Andrade's big memory study from 2010. That one really opened my eyes.
Oh yeah, that's a classic.
We'll also look at the therapeutic side, thanks to research from ISIS and colleagues in 2023, and trace how doodling's kind of become an art form, looking at Meyertholen from 2022 and Bowija from 2020.
So by the time we rank this up, you'll probably see doodling less as just a habit and more like, a surprisingly powerful tool.
A tool. Interesting.
Yeah, we're talking potential boosts for focus, for memory, creativity, even just your emotional balance. We're going to break down the science and look at, practical ways you might actually use this yourself.
Okay, let's start at the start then. What exactly is doodling? It feels, something we all kind of know, but maybe struggle to define.
Yeah, it's common but tricky. According to Gupta's research, the general idea is making spontaneous marks, drawings, often subconsciously, right? While your attention is supposed to be somewhere else.
Like on that boring conference call.
Exactly. And it can be anything from, abstract shapes to little pictures. Usually happens during those listening times, phone calls, lectures, meetings.
Right, and for ages, if someone saw you doodling, the assumption was, oh, they're not paying attention. Could even seem a bit rude, couldn't it?
For sure. That was definitely the historical take. But what's really interesting now, as Gupta also points out, is that scholarship is kind of flipping that script.
Oh, so?
Well, there's this growing view that doodling can actually be cognitively useful, even a form of, creative expression.
Okay, that's a big shift. So if we're not just being distracted, what's really going on? I think I read something about it being auto-hypnotic. Does that sound right?
Yeah, exactly. Battles, back in 2016, suggested it's a really basic human thing, almost a subconscious response to mental input. They use that term auto-hypnotic, suggesting it might actually help focus.
Help focus. How?
By engaging part of your mind rhythmically, sort of in the background, without messing up the main task you're doing.
Okay, that kind of makes sense. So it's not pulling attention away, but maybe occupying a restless part of the brain so the rest can focus better.
That's the idea. Battles argues it's not mindless, but maybe a sign the brain's trying to process things, engage with what's happening.
Right. This is where it gets super interesting for me. Focus is one thing, but the memory link, that Andrade study from 2010 you mentioned.
Oh yeah, Andrade's work is really foundational here. What they found was pretty striking. People who doodled while listening to this deliberately dull voice message, they recalled 29% more info afterwards.
Whoa, 29%. That's not trivial. That's nearly a third more.
Exactly. It's a big jump.
So the idea is the doodling helped them
Wait, what?
stay engaged enough to actually remember the details. So in those meetings where your mind drifts, maybe a little scribbling could actually help you absorb more. That could make a real difference.
That's what Andrade suggested. The physical act helps anchor your attention, reduces that mind wandering, especially when the main activity isn't super stimulating, keeps you just engaged enough.
Okay, so cognitively, what's firing in the brain then, when we're doodling and remembering more?
Well, Andrade's work points to executive functions, things like working memory, managing your attention. It's like you're giving your brain just enough to do to stop it drifting off completely, but not so much it distracts from the main event.
Like a little mental anchor. Got it. And what about the kind of memory? I vaguely remember something about recognizing versus recalling.
Ah, yes, good point. Singh and Kashyap looked into that in 2015. They found doodling seemed to boost recognition memory, like recognizing something you've seen or heard before more reliably than recall memory, which is pulling info out of thin air.
Interesting.
The thinking is maybe doodling helps reinforce visual links, making it easier to recognize stuff later.
So seeing my doodle might trigger the memory better than just trying to remember the words alone. Okay, and the neuroscience. What's the deeper brain stuff happening?
Gupta's work touches on this, too. The neuroscientific angle suggests doodling might activate the brain's default mode network, or DMN.
The DMN? What's that?
Think of it as your brain's background processing system. It kicks in when you're not focused on an external task, daydreaming, mind-wandering, but also creativity, consolidating memories, thinking about yourself.
Okay.
So doodling seems to gently stimulate this network, gives it something low-key to do, maybe keeping those creative thoughts simmering without derailing your focus on, say, the lecture.
So letting the hand wander might actually be tapping into this network that helps us process things and be more creative.
That's the current thinking, yeah. It seems like doodling offers this low-demand way to channel mental energy, supporting both internal thought and maybe even managing our feelings.
Okay, cognition is clear, memory boost. But you mentioned psychological benefits too. That really fascinates me. How can just scribbling affect our emotions or well-being?
Yeah, this is a really exciting area. For instance, that 2023 study by ISIS and colleagues, they specifically looked at mindfulness-based doodling.
Mindfulness-based, so paying attention while you doodle.
Exactly. Not just absent-minded scribbling, but bringing awareness to it. They found participants reported feeling more mindful, more positive emotions, and fewer negative ones after doing it.
So consciously noticing the pen, the patterns, paying attention to the movement, the sensation. It seems that focused awareness is key to the emotional benefits they saw.
Sounds almost like a mini meditation you can do anywhere. You also mentioned emotional expression.
Yes, Siak 2017 study with language learners was really telling. They found students actually used doodling to get out their anxiety about learning English.
Really?
Yeah, it became this nonverbal way to express feelings they maybe couldn't or didn't want to say out loud.
Wow, so if words fail you, a doodle can step in. That's quite powerful. What about stress, burnout, things many of us deal with?
Nash's 2021 research looked right at that. They found group doodling helped people relax and connect. And interestingly, with all the virtual meetings, people reported that doodling alone during those calls helped them focus and feel less anxious. I know I feel that Zoom fatigue sometimes. Maybe I should try doodling in the next one.
It's definitely worth a shot. It seems like this simple act can tap into reducing stress.
It's really quite amazing the range of benefits from something so seemingly simple, memory, focus, emotional state. Now, people doodle differently, right? Are there distinct styles? And do they maybe do different things for us?
Absolutely. Doodling isn't monolithic. There's a whole spectrum of styles. And yeah, it looks like different styles might engage different cognitive or emotional pathways.
Okay, like what? Give us some examples.
Well, one common one is geometric doodling. Think repeating shapes, circles, squares, triangles, spirals. The ISIS study from 2023 linked this kind of repetitive drawing to stress relief, getting into a calmer state. Probably because it's rhythmic, almost meditative. Zentangle is a great example of this, those structured patterns Gupta mentioned.
Right, Zentangles, those detailed black and white things, they definitely look calming. What else?
Then you've got abstract doodles, just free-form lines, swirls, marks that don't necessarily look like anything specific.
The classic meeting scribble.
Exactly. And Boege's perspective suggests these might be really good for divergent thinking, for creativity. Because you're not trying to draw something, your brain's freer to make unexpected connections. Casario also linked this to activating that default mode network we talked about.
So just letting the pen flow can spark ideas. Cool.
Yeah. And then there are mandalas. Circular, symmetrical designs. They have spiritual roots, obviously. But the ISIS study also noted their use in art therapy. Drawing them can help with concentration, induce a meditative state, good for emotional regulation.
The symmetry is quite centering, I imagine. What about when people draw actual things, little faces, characters?
Right, character and narrative doodles, drawing little figures, maybe anthropomorphic things. Ziad Tawakat's study touched on how this can be really helpful for expressing emotions, especially maybe difficult ones, giving a feeling a visual form, you know?
Yeah, like drawing a little grumpy character when you're feeling frustrated.
Exactly. And finally, there's doodle lettering, combining words and illustration, like you see in bullet journals. Ying's work highlighted how this engages spatial awareness, fine motor skills. It's creative, but also quite cognitively engaging.
Wow, so many kinds. And it's interesting how this is moving beyond just personal notes, right? Into the art world.
That's a really key point. Historically, yeah, doodling was seen as informal, maybe trivial, but it is definitely getting more recognition now as a legit form of artistic expression.
From the margins to the galleries,
Kinda.
pretty much.
Just a fascinating shift.
How did that happen? What pushed doodling into the art conversation?
Well, a few things. Meyer-Tholen's analysis points way back to Hans Prinzhorn in 1922. He studied and published art made by psychiatric patients, much of which had this raw, doodle-like quality. It showed the expressive power outside of formal training.
Challenging the definition of art early on.
Exactly. And then later, Jean Dubuffet and the Art Brut movement really championed this raw, untutored style. Dubuffet himself used doodle-like forms, elevating them, challenging the art establishment. Meyer-Tholen highlights how significant that was.
So these key figures helped legitimize it. And you mentioned contemporary artists, too.
Yeah, artists like John Bergerman, Mr. Doodle, they're huge now. Boesia talks about how their complex, vibrant doodle works are internationally recognized, shown in galleries, used in branding. It really shows doodle art is culturally relevant now.
It's great that something so accessible is being taken seriously. And that link to emotion you mentioned, how does that play out when doodling becomes art?
Siak Tuwakad's research suggests these doodles aren't just random. They can communicate subconscious stuff, feelings that are hard to put into words. So as art, it's a powerful channel for self-expression, maybe even catharsis.
A visual diary of the subconscious almost. And I love that anyone can do it. You don't need fancy paints or training.
That's maybe the most important part. Boesia and others really stress this democratizing aspect. Super low barrier to entry. It breaks down those old walls between high art and low art. Everyone can be an artist through doodling.
So if someone's listening and thinking, okay, I'm sold, but I haven't doodled since school, how do they, start?
Great question. The main thing is no pressure, no rules. It's about playing, exploring. But if you need a starting point, Andrade's study actually used simple shapes, so we would just start there, circles, lines, just get the pen moving.
Just make a mark, don't overthink it.
Exactly. And Boesia really emphasizes letting your mind wander. Try not to judge what comes out. Don't aim for a masterpiece. Just engage with the process.
Go with the outcome. Embrace the squiggle.
Totally. And you can bring in that mindfulness aspect we talked about, like Isis and colleagues showed. Notice the feeling of the pen, the movement, the patterns appearing. That can really boost the well-being side.
Turn it into a little mindful moment. What about tools and styles? Should people experiment?
Yeah, definitely. Gupta mentioned different tools can change how engaged you feel. Try different pens, pencils, markers, even digital tools if you like. And Casario suggests trying different styles, maybe Zentangles, maybe mandalas, maybe just simple characters. See what clicks for you.
Find your doodle voice, maybe?
Kind of. And remember, you can use it intentionally, too. Gupta noted you can use doodling to brainstorm, visualize ideas, work through problems. Activating that default mode network can really help with creative blocks.
So if you're stuck, just start doodling about the problem.
Could work. And finally, like any good habit, consistency helps. Nash's research suggests that cognitive and emotional perks build up. So maybe try making it a small, regular thing.
Okay, that's really practical advice. So we know what it is, the benefits, styles, how to start. But let's go a bit deeper into the why. What's the core science making this simple thing work so well?
Right, the mechanisms. We've touched on them, but let's pull it together. A key idea coming from folks like Casario and Andrade is that daydream reduction hypothesis. Basically, doodling uses just enough brain power to stop you from completely zoning out or getting lost in excessive mind wandering. This actually frees up resources to better process whatever you're supposed to be focusing on.
The sweet spot of engagement. Not too much, not too little.
Exactly. And we talk about stimulating the default mode network. Gupta and Boesia both highlight this. That's your brain's creative engine, helps with insights and connecting ideas.
Letting the brain play in the background productively.
Precisely. And then there's the physical side, that ISIS study on mindfulness doodling. It suggested engaging the parasympathetic nervous system. That's your rest and digest system. So it literally helps calm you down, reduce anxiety physiologically.
So it's mind and body. Wow. And you mentioned doodles maybe reflecting our mental state.
Yeah, Nash's research hinted at this. Changes in how people doodled seem to sometimes mirror their stress levels or feelings of burnout. Like, our subconscious is leaving little clues in the scribbles.
Fascinating, like reading tea leaves, but with your own doodles. And what was that about cognitive load and modality?
Right, Chan's study made an important point. Doodling works best when it doesn't fight the main task for the same sensory channel. So, Listening while doodling. Good combo, different channels, auditory versus visual kinesthetic. Trying to understand a complex diagram while doing detailed visual doodling. Maybe not so good. They're both visual.
Makes sense. Don't overload one sense. Okay, so understanding the science, how is this actually being used? Like in schools or at work?
Yeah, the applications are really interesting. In education, Andrade's findings suggest it helps students stay present, reduces mind wandering in class, potentially boosting learning. Rivera-Cora and colleagues even suggested it helps build those mental concept maps, visualizing how ideas connect.
Visualizing helps learning stick. Makes sense. But you said there were some mixed results in classrooms.
Yes, important caveat. Pushkaryova and Stepanuk's 2024 study found doodling sometimes hindered memory for a specific history text. So it's not a magic bullet. Context matters, the type of material, maybe the student, the time of day. It's complex.
So maybe not universally helpful, depends on the situation. What about language learning specifically?
Rouhani and Nasseri found it helped EFL learners with short-term vocabulary recall. And as we said, Siak Tawakat showed it helped students manage language learning anxiety. So potential benefits there, both cognitive and emotional.
Like a little pressure release valve. And in the workplace, those long meetings, brainstorming sessions.
Bowidges suggests it's great for maintaining focus and creativity during those marathon meetings. Helps fight off the brain fog. And Nash found both group and solo doodling helped well-being and engagement in a team setting.
Maybe companies should provide doodle pads. Okay, we're living digitally now. How is doodling changing with tech?
Oh, it's definitely evolving. Digital tools, tablets, apps like Procreate, Fresco, they've opened up huge possibilities. Bowidges talks about accessibility, interactivity. Rivera-Cora noted digital doodling could even improve visualization for concept mapping.
Plus, infinite canvas, undo buttons, lots of flexibility.
Exactly. And the therapeutic side is going digital too. Isis and colleagues showed virtual mindfulness doodling workshops still work well emotionally. Nash also found benefits for digital doodling during remote work. Makes therapy more accessible.
That's great, reaching more people. Any really cutting-edge digital doodle stuff happening?
Some really surprising things. Pearson and colleagues used AI to analyze doodles to potentially help detect cognitive decline early based on how people replicate shapes.
Wow, diagnostic doodling.
Yeah, and completely different. Naveen Sundar and Madhav explored graphical doodle passwords for better security way back in 2007.
Doodles for passwords, that's wild.
It shows the versatility. And finally, culturally, Bowidges notes how online platforms, Instagram, TikTok, artists there are really pushing doodling as a serious art form, changing perceptions.
Taking it mainstream online. Okay, this has been a really thorough exploration.
Yeah, it really has. So as you can probably see now, doodling, it's way more than just killing time. It's this fascinating mix of cognition, emotion, creativity. From boosting your memory in that dull meeting to giving you a mindful pause, maybe even hinting at how you're feeling. Those little marks have surprising depth.
It definitely makes you look at your own scribbles differently, doesn't it? What shapes do you usually make? When do you tend to doodle? Maybe this whole conversation gives those doodles a new meaning.
Yeah.
Perhaps you'll even grab a pen on purpose next time you need to focus, or just want a moment of, like, creative flow.
And here's a final thought to chew on. If something so simple, so subconscious, can have these kinds of effects on our minds, what other everyday behaviors might hold hidden potential? What other seemingly small habits could be keys to unlocking more focus, more creativity, or better well-being for you? Something to think about.